It is my great good pleasure to introduce you to our speaker today, Reverend John Paul Roach. Paul John Roach. We got it backwards on here. Sorry.
That's all right.
Paul John, and I've done that before, and I apologize. His topic today is everything that rises must converge. And I have to confess, I have a personal interest in this because Paul John is Dennis is my original Unity minister back in Fort Worth, where he was the minister for an astonishing, record-breaking 40 years from 1988 to 2018. When you recognize that most ministers last with a single congregation on the average about 10 years, you can see what an accomplishment it is to have been loved and maintained in the same spot for 40 years. Yay, Paul John. He has a long and varied history, starting in Wales. He's a Welshman born, went to school in Wales originally, and then went to the Unity School in Kansas City and graduated in 88. And that was the year he started Fort Worth Unity, which that must have been a very quick transition for you. He's the author of many podcasts, and some of them are still archived. You can find them it's called World Spirituality with Reverend Paul John Roach for about 14 years. You can find them in the normal places, Podbean, Spotify, and Apple. And he's the author of a book on unity and world religions, which speaks of the perennial philosophy, which strings together the religions of the world throughout the ages up to the present day. He's working on a current book about his 1976 trip to India, and I'm going to ask him about that during coffee talk later. But for now, the topic is, where are we here? Everything that rises must converge. Paul John, take it away.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and lovely to be with everybody. Thank you for inviting me today. And yes, I go back a long time with Dennis and Susan because they were dedicated members of our congregation back in the day. And when they told me that they were considering becoming Unity ministers, I was taken aback because they had very successful careers in the medical field and had their own horse farm down in the country, southwest of Fort Worth. And I thought, my goodness, that takes courage to leave that behind and start all new. And that they did it. They went through ministerial school, and now I understand it's been going on for what, 16 years. Yeah, that's amazing. And all kudos to them. And I'm glad that they've created this center and that we can all work together to lift up the truth that we believe in unity. And, I was thinking about I knew I had to do a sermon. I'd done a couple recently, and I had some what I thought were great ideas, all ready to go. And this time it was like, well, wait a minute, I don't think I've got any ideas right now. But as happens in spirit, you just rest and relax and let the Spirit speak to you. And all of a sudden, these words came to me: everything that rises must converge, which is a quote from Teilhard de Chardin. And from then on, I just sat down and pretty much wrote the whole thing out. It all flowed. So it wasn't me. As often we say, it's not me. It's the Spirit that moves in me, right? Everything that rises must converge. I just love that statement, and we'll explore it. And is it true, number one? And if it is, how can we live from it? And I'm going to offer 10 ways that we can possibly do that. There's a bittersweet song today, yes, by Paul Simon, and it sort of conveys some of the energy and consciousness where we're at right now in our nation, in our world. It's gone a little down and dirty, hasn't it? We see less than virtuous behaviors happening in high places. There's division all around. People don't seem very happy, When I first came to the States back in the 80s, it was a whole different place to what it is now. People were just in general happier and more confident. Now there's that sense of some kind of malaise going on. And of course, all around our world, we got war and hatred and immoral behavior, as I said. It's always been like that, by the way. Yes, there's never been a perfect age. You can talk about the 60s in America. It was a pretty rough time too. But it's somehow the stakes seem a little higher right now. But guess what? This is a Unity church service. I'm a Unity minister. We're not going to just focus on all the down and dirty stuff, right? Because why would we bother to show up if that's all we've showed up for? We're going to go to try and find some high ground to pursue the high watch, right? To stay optimistic and hopeful, endeavoring to be light in the dark. And I think that's something we really can do. And that is, we know that we have the light of the Spirit within us, and therefore we can consciously, on a daily basis, determine to be light in the dark, right? It doesn't matter how much dark there is. I am the light. We are the light, all of us. And so to focus on that is the antidote to all kinds of down and dirty behavior. And to me, that keeps me going. I'm not going to spend my time focusing on all the things that are wrong. I'm going to remember what's right, because ultimately God is right and God rules the universe. So, and by the way, God's been doing it for how long? The universe, so they say, is 14.5 billion. I'm not sure how they determine that, but I'm going to let the scientists be right in this. 14.5 billion years, right? That's a long time. And it's so far so good, right? The how long has the Earth been going? Several million years. So yeah, we got to trust this. This divine order is established on a daily basis in everything that we do. That is our reality. It was my late wife that introduced me to Teilhard de Chardin, and so I was reading the books with her, and when I came to one passage where this statement was at, it blew our socks off. Remember, when we both looked at each other and thought, "Wow, that's put in such succinct way." In what, 5 words? Everything that rises must converge. Somehow it seemed right. It seemed to speak to the non-dual unitive perspective and the idea that there is this progression to unity, to oneness, to convergence, right? And it comes from a book called The Future of Man, which was published in 1942, which is another wild and crazy time, yeah? America had just come into World War II. There was all kinds of crazy things going on. It didn't look good for democracy, didn't look good for world peace. But yet he was able to write these words. I'll quote the full passage here for you to set it in context. It says, "Remain true to yourself," which is what we're talking about, right? To the light within you. Remain true to yourself, but move ever upward toward greater consciousness and great love. Move ever upward. At the summit, you will find yourselves united with all those who, from every direction, have made the same ascent. For everything that rises, guess what? Must converge, right? I love this. Let's unpack this a little bit. Be true to yourself, right? That's the first thing. This isn't about Pollyanna living, right? It's not trying to immediately get to the solution. It's being honest about where we are at any given time. Wherever we are is okay if we're honest about it, right? If I'm feeling down, admit that. Be down for that moment. Be real. That's important, because you cannot move forward unless you're real at the beginning. So be real, but move ever upward towards greater consciousness and great life. Open to that opportunity that there is always more, whether I can see it or not. When I was in school, my high school motto was "Ymlaen," because I grew up in Wales, and that was the Welsh. Ymlaen in Welsh means forward. And I've always loved that. That was my motto in the high school. And I think it's my motto today, is forward, always upward and onward, right? Onward and upward, forward. It never stays the same. You can get stuck if you want, but that's optional. You have the opportunity to always move forward to greater consciousness, great love. At the summit, and I love this statement, at the summit you will find yourselves united with all those who from every direction have made the same ascent. Isn't that beautiful? We're all uniquely individual, and yet we're all moving up the mountain, yeah? And when we get to the summit, we'll see that we're discovering it for ourselves, but with all these other people. So I love that. And from every direction. So whether you're a Buddhist, a Unitic, a Hindu, a Muslim, an atheist, whatever it is, right? We're all moving up this mountain together. And when we get to the mountain top, we are celebrating, right? Because we're at the ascent. We realize that everything that rises, that's us. We're rising, we're converging, we're coming together. Where two or three, Jesus said this, when two or three are gathered, what? There I am, right? So there's more than two or three in our group today, isn't there? We are coming together. We are ascending the mountain of all possibility right now in this service and coming together in this new understanding of togetherness and love. Okay, so on the summit, everything converges. Yes, can we agree to that? Is that true? If you've ever climbed a mountain, no matter where you start, right, you're going to converge when you get to the top. There's something called the Hegelian dialectic. I don't want to get too philosophical here, but some of you may have heard of Hegel, the great philosopher. His famous dialectic was thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And it's a bit like a triangle, right? We have a thesis, my viewpoint, and there's always the opposite viewpoint, the antithesis. And they're both on the lower level of the pyramid. But if we live there, we're in duality always, because it's my idea and your idea, thesis, antithesis. And that can be fun. We can have a good argument, but we're never getting anywhere because we're always arguing about who's right. But then there's this third force, which takes us up to the pyramid, to the top of the triangle, which is synthesis, right? We have a synthesis of the thesis and the antithesis. We're seeing a third way, another possibility. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? So when we get to that higher level, that synthesis, that third force, then we're really into another dimension. And of course, it starts again from that higher level. You start another dialectic. And so the triangles go around and around, rising and rising, because everything that rises must converge. I've always liked that Hegelian dialectic, because the idea that, yeah, you could stay stuck on the one level. In fact, Einstein said this. Remember Einstein saying you can't solve the problem at the level of the problem. You have to take it higher. So if you're stuck on that flat horizontal, nothing changes, right? We're just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We're moaning and groaning about the way things are happening, and ain't it awful? We're not going to get anywhere. We have to rise up. We have to get to that synthesis. We have to get to that understanding. There's something greater going on, right? That convergence. And by the way, this convergence is not a blank synthesis. I don't want to buy into that either. You know, there's some people think, well, when we all come together as one, it'll be bliss. But I think it'll be actually boring, because we want to still maintain our unique individuality. Yeah. It's not about all becoming part of the Borg here. If you've ever watched Star Trek, it's not about the Borg. It's about our individual flavor. So we still maintain our individual flavor, at the same time knowing that we are one. I think this is beautifully demonstrated by Jesus. Jesus was a very real human being. Even after the resurrection, he was down on the beach grilling some fish. He was very real. And I think this is part of the understanding here. We don't bliss out into some kind of spiritual thing. We embody spirit in a unique and beautiful way as we are. We're no longer encumbered by our egos, but we allow our personality to be free, to be joyous, but not encumbered by ego identification. It just is part of the flow of spirit in action in our world. And I think that's hugely important to remember that. I think sometimes in Unity, we kind of jump to Pollyanna, you know, we jump to making it all right. And if I could escape from all my problems and find spirit, you know, that's another form of duality, actually, because we have to integrate everything into the one. Let me share a very famous statement. It's been attributed to many different philosophers over the years, and I really don't know who wrote it. I thought it was St. Augustine. Somebody else said it was Blaise Pascal or whatever. I don't know, but I like it. And it says, God is a circle. You're probably familiar with this one, right? God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Let me say it again, because it's a bit of a paradox. God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. You know, Dennis and Susan will know that in my previous career as a minister, when we were in my sermons in church, this would be a time where I'd stop and we'd have a little discussion. We'd get feedback from the congregation. That's hard to do here right now. But I love that because you get so many good answers coming back at you, and it made it really a dynamic process, being engaged in a message. But think about it anyway. Center is everywhere, right? We are centers. Each of us is a center of spirit, but there's no limit to it. Its circumference is limitless. So it's like we're a drop in the ocean, but we are the ocean at the same time. So everybody's a center, but we're experiencing it uniquely. Just as the drop of water is experiencing what it means to be the drop, while at the same time is the ocean. And so a wave can enjoy itself being a wave, but in actuality, it comes and it goes. And what's the reality is the ocean. But while it's a wave, it can exult in being a wave, right? And right now, between birth and death, we're exulting in being a wave on the ocean. And so celebrate that. That's your center right now. But always remember that the true center is the ocean, not the wave. And so often we identify with the wave rather than identifying with the truth of our being. We get confused, sad, and all these things because my wave isn't showing up like it should. Whereas, in fact, we need to focus on the fact that I am the ocean. I am the center that contains all. And it's unlimited. Its circumference is nowhere, right? It's vast. It's unlimited. So that tells you that we are, right now, vast and unlimited, yeah? You can all nod and I'll go on, just so I know you. Yeah, all right, good. All right. Anyway, it's a profound thing, the idea that we're unique and one at the same time, yeah? We weave both together, which is the part of the joy of being alive on planet Earth, is we get to be, and that's another quote from Teilhard de Chardin, right? We're divine beings having a human experience. And he's pointing to that the coincidence of opposites, what appears to be a paradox, comes together in us. We are both very fragile, limited, pain bodies, but we're also totally unlimited, strong spirit bodies, spirit beings as well. Teilhard de Chardin like to talk about progression, and he talks about the planet Earth being, first of all, a geosphere, a sphere of rock, the geology of the thing. And then as it develops into a biosphere, which we're familiar with. It's a common term now. And then he posited there was a third level, which is a new sphere, the sphere of mind, the collective consciousness of the planet. Both Charles Fillmore and Jung and many other people have talked about this consciousness of the planet. And as we progress further, we'll reach what Teilhard de Chardin called the Omega point, which is where we achieve Christ consciousness. And, it's a nice progression from the earthy to the spiritual that's going to happen as the planet unfolds. And I like to think about the planet in that way. There's a living being, and we're part of that. We're being lifted up to become one. Now, whether that's true or not, it's nice philosophy. But what can I do today, right? What can I do today, this week, that will make a difference? Because that's the bottom line. But this has to be practical spirituality, yes? Otherwise, what's the point? So I've got 10 things, and maybe there's one or two that you'll find meaningful that you can embody this week for yourself, okay? So, and some of them will be repeats of some of the things I've said before, because in laying the groundwork, we're going to reiterate some of the important things here. So, number one is be real. Like we said earlier, we got to be real, be true to yourself. All feelings are okay, yeah? If you stuff a feeling, what happens to it? It festers, doesn't it? And it's going to break out somewhere in an unfortunate way. So don't stuff anything. Be honest. Just embrace where you are at any given time. Start where you are, but as Pema Chodron said in one of her wonderful books, start where you are. But don't get stuck there, right? Because if you're stuck, you're in the cycle, the endless cycle of the washing machine, round and around and around. We don't want to be human washing machines, do we? However clean you might end up being, it's still no fun. There's a quote by Thomas Troward. He was a great British metaphysician, And I love his works. And he was doing this independently from Charles and Myrtle over in Britain back in the 1890s. And it was only later that they all discovered each other, saying, "Whoa, we're thinking the same things." I think that happens a lot. You know, great inventions are usually invented by two or three people around the planet, and then they only get together later and say, "Hey, I had the same idea you did." Well, how does that work? Because of collective consciousness, surely. Anyway, Thomas Troward had an antidote for getting stuck in the spin cycle, and he said, whenever you got a problem that seems super unsurmountable, you need to look at it and examine it and approach it and go walk right up to it. Don't be afraid of it. And then as you look it in the face, you go, cock-a-doodle-doo. So you can cock-a-doodle-doo a problem. And I've always found that helpful, you know, but it has to be the right time and the right place, you know. If you start cock-a-doodle-dooing, they might haul you away. But if you're in the right place, when it's not just a silly put on, when it's real, when you really are facing it, and you could say, you're not all that important. Cock-a-doodle-doo, I'm not going to let you be overwhelming in my life. Then that can be a powerful shift. So I just throw that in to help us not stay stuck. Number two, be willing. You know, there's a willingness. I've looked at many people on the spiritual path in my many years in the ministry and on the journey. And what I see from great masters is their willingness. They're always willing. They're willing to be present to their students. They're willing to entertain something that's not necessarily their teaching. They're willing to change their minds. They're willing to be very, very simple and natural and present. So be willing, right? There's a resistance that comes when we don't want to learn anything more. You know, I've got the T-shirt. I've been there. I don't need anything else. You're not willing anymore. So be willing. Willing is opening. Yeah, willing is there's something new for me here, and it leads to a certain optimism. That's two. Number three, do the work, however hard, right? Because life isn't easy. And if you don't want to do the work, you're probably not going to get the results, right? There has to be a certain amount of work. Look at Dennis and Susan, you know, they left their careers. They did the work. They went to seminary. A lot of people will say, hey, I went to school. I don't want to go to school again. But they were willing to put themselves through that. And I guess the same for me. I was in the middle of my career and decided to do something else. There's got to be that willingness to do the work, yeah? Otherwise, you don't succeed. Climb a mountain. Anybody climbed a mountain? How many of it? Put your hands up if you have. All right, climbed a hill. Climbed a molehill. We've all climbed something, right? So if you ever climbed a mountain, it's work, isn't it? It's not easy, right? There's times when you're halfway up and you think, oh, do I really need to go further up, etc. A banker friend of mine, he's 60 years old. He decided to climb Kilimanjaro last year, and they went at Christmas time, I think. And he did it, but he said, "My God, I've never worked so hard in all my life, but I'm glad I did it." And he said, "Check that off my bucket list," you know. And that's quite an achievement because it's 19,000 feet. You know, that's a big mountain. In October, November, we went to Bhutan, my wife and I, and at the end of the trip, we went to the Tiger's Nest. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but it's a monastery that's way up 11,000 feet, and you climb about 2,500 feet, and it takes about 6 or 7 hours there and back, and it's up, it's straight up, and it's on a cliff face, so there's mountains and cliffs above you, just sheer rock, and then sheer rock below you. It's fabulous, a fabulous place. Spiritual energy. It was built in the 8th century, and it's full of spiritual. There's monks in there perpetually chanting and whatnot. Anyway, we were halfway up, and we thought, oh my gosh, there's a little tea stand halfway up. It fools you, you know. You think, oh, I'm halfway there, and then you realize, oh no, it gets a lot worse from here. But they give you a cup of tea to encourage you. But a lot of people will say, oh, this tea's good. I'm just going to stay here. You go on ahead. But we thought we've come, you know, 10,000 miles or whatever it was from America to Bhutan. We are not going to go to the top of the Tiger's Nest. We got to do it. And when we got to the top, we went into a temple, and there was monks there that were inviting people to light a butter lamp and recite a prayer for peace. And we did that. And we both had tears in our eyes because the energy in there was palpable. And I thought, this is why we're here. We were here to light that candle and recite that prayer, and everything was worthwhile. But what a remarkable day. So you don't always get what you need until you are willing to do the work. That's 3. 4, always return to center. We talked about the center earlier, which is everywhere. It's the still point at the heart of you, right? Now, wherever you go, there's always the center, yes? So return to center. I think that was Charles Fillmore's and Myrtle Fillmore's greatest insight, was the silence, entered into the silence, which is the still point, the center of the universe. You are the center. We are all the centers. It's amazing, isn't it? When we're in that center, we are one, but we're uniquely different at the same time. It's beautiful. God allows for this. God allows for being unique and one at the same time. That's a feat right there. No magician could do that. You know, that's unbelievable to do that. And we have the ability to do just that. So spend time in the still point, wherever you are, even if it's just for a second, right? Go to center, because then I will shift everything. You go, if it doesn't shift, go back again, because it will work if you are present to it. So often we say we don't have time to do it or whatever, but we know that's an excuse, right? We always have time to center ourselves in the way that is yours to do, by the way. There's no one way to do it. You find the way that works for you. All right. What was that? That was 4. Number 5, enjoy moments of convergence along the way. You know, just because we talk about the summit, it doesn't say that, does it? It says everything that rises must converge. Convergence happens as we're walking up the mountain as well. We don't have to wait till we get to the top to get the full convergence. There's moments of convergence because we are willing to move in that direction. So enjoy those moments. And I have some great talks sometimes with checkout people. And I thought, wow, that was a real connection there. We converged there for that moment. Or we had a laugh, or somebody, or you look at a little child and you do something fun with them for a moment. I'm with one of my grandchildren right now. And it's just lovely to converge in that way, you know, to be present without any making it a big, meaningful experience. It just is. It's wonderful. If you recall it and you think, wow, that was a moment of convergence. That was a moment of connection. And that's priceless, I think. Yes, because we can have moments of convergence at any time in our day. We're converging now, aren't we? Are you feeling a little bit of convergence? I am. Yeah, it's great to be here. All right, let's see. That was 5, right? Remind me here. I got to look. Yeah, 6. 6. As you arise, there's also the ability to enjoy the higher perspective that climbing the mountain, that rising gives you, right? Because as you come up, if you've ever been, again, we all have, we've been climbing the mountain or a hill or a molehill, but as we go up higher, we see things more than we did when we were below. Often it's dramatic, you know, the view is concealed when we're down below. When we rise up, we can see for miles, right? Remember that Who song? I can see for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. I always loved that song because I thought it was a very spiritual song. When we've risen up in consciousness, then we begin to see for miles. We begin to see with a global perspective. Just as the latest Artemis 2 view from space, right? Looking back on planet Earth was so spectacular, wasn't it? And especially that Earthrise that they took from the back end of the moon. It was just glorious. And that's what we're talking about, that global perspective where we can look back and see ourselves as this very fragile but beautiful planet, right? That is our home, our only home. And to care for it, to look after it. But my goodness, we've abused it tremendously. But it's never too late to help Mother Nature restore itself, right? Because that's what's going to restore it, not us. We have to cooperate with the energies of the planet to restore to its beauty. 7, remember, and we have a bad time in this sometimes in Unity. We're a little bit parochial sometimes. We're all on the same journey, whether we know it or not. Sometimes we've got this idea, oh, I'm in Unity with like-minded people, not like them out there that don't understand, and all that sort of attitude. Well, that's dualism. The fact is that even the people we despise are on the path too. Yeah. And I would suggest that even our president and all the rest of the gang are on the spiritual path too. And therefore, they are beloved children of God also. Now, it may be hidden, it may be down and distant in their consciousness. I don't know. I can't judge. But I have to embrace all if I'm going to embrace oneness for myself, right? Nobody is rejected. It doesn't mean I have to like the behavior. I certainly don't. Doesn't mean I have to condone it even. Doesn't mean I can't fight against it if I can. But I still behold the Christ, because if Jesus did it, if Jesus forgave and loved all, then I must do too. That's good for my soul, and it's good for the planet, because I'm not dividing people off into evil or good. I'm seeing that we're all struggling, fighting a great battle, and trying to come up higher, right? So I'm encouraging that coming up higher for all beings on the planet. And think about somebody you despise, you have a hard time with, you've welcomed them home. One time, my wife was serving on a board at the local city level, and one of the councillors, I think it was the mayor of the town, Fort Worth, was just doing the behaviours that we just didn't agree with, and we'd be sitting in bed at night, bitching and moaning about him, and then my wife came up with the idea, she said, "This may be bad, but I don't have to bring this guy into bed at night with us." And I thought, what a great idea. It's true. I do not have to welcome this guy into my intimate space here. And we were doing that. We were allowing ourselves to be dragged down. It's not a threesome. Get out of here. And so it was wonderful to notice that. This is a free zone. It's not. This guy is not involved in that. We can pick it up later, but we have to separate it at that moment. And that's healthy, I think. That's healthy to remember that we put a space around it, put a boundary around that. All right. And since we're in bed, at the end of each day, let it be, let it go and pick it up in the morning. I think that's crucially important because Jesus said this. He said, whatever enmity you have with someone, reconcile before the day's over. That doesn't mean it's perfectly reconciled, but it means I'm reconciled to it being what it is right now. I'm going to let it go, because that's healthy. If we take it to bed with us, if we take it into our dreams, into our subconscious, it's a problem. It's a difficulty then. It's going to build in our consciousness. So at the end of each day, make a conscious effort to say, I am releasing everything right now, and I'm going into a peaceful sleep so I can awake refreshed and pick up my problems in the morning. No, you don't say that, but you see what I'm saying? Let it go so that when we do come back to it in the morning, we'll have a refreshed and new perspective on it. Number 9, don't forget third force. We talked about that earlier. And all the great masters of this planet went to third force, folks, didn't they? Jesus certainly did. The Buddha, Saint Teresa, all the great mystics that I love. Moses, they didn't stay at the level of the problem. They understood there was a higher way. And so they went to that third force, that synthesis of ideas. In fact, Jesus said this. He says, if I am lifted up, I will lift all people up. I love that statement. If I'm lifted up, I will lift all other people up. So when we arise, we naturally become a attracting force, a magnetic influence on others. Because people see our energy and want to be like that. Some people don't. They react to it in a negative way, but that's fine. We just bless those people. But there are many that will see and want to be like that. I want what he's having, that kind of thing. I want to rise up. I feel there's good energy there, and I want to be around that. That's why we gather together, so to encourage each other, right? To rise up together. He also said in Matthew 25, I think it was, what you did, Jesus says, what you did for the least of these, you did for me. So this can happen in the minutest of moments, right? In the most seemingly insignificant of moments. I saw this sign. It was posted. It was a signpost in Wales or some, I think, but it doesn't matter where it was. It says, there's that phrase, at this time in 1922, nothing happened. And you've seen those signs, But this one was at this place. It didn't say the date, but it said almost an imperceptible kindness was done in an imperceptible way to another person. And I thought, wow, that's cool. In other words, you never know what kindness, what seemingly imperceptible thing you are doing when you remember you are light, you're centered, you're willing, you're present. You could make a difference to someone, right? It might be imperceptible. You might not even be aware that you're doing it, but you are doing it. You made a great change for that person, perhaps. And that's not your business. Your business is to be there, to be present. If it doesn't happen, great, that's fine too. But if it does happen, what a grace, what a blessing that you've been that day. And you couldn't have been that blessing unless you were done the work to climb the mountain, to be present, to be willing, to be real, right? And to open to this idea that everything that rises must converge. So, number 10, this is the doing bit per excellence. Today, I accept the challenge. Do you accept the challenge? I accept the challenge to go onward and upward. There's no going back. Jesus put his hand, he said, once you put your hand to the plow, there's no going back. You've got to keep going, right? I am determined and destined to do this because I am a beautiful, beautiful child of God. It's not difficult. I'm equipped. I am totally equipped by Spirit to do all this that we've been talking about today. And I know that, yes, this is true. Everything that rises must converge. So it is. Thank you, God. So let's take a moment to meditate on that idea. And in meditation, as we said earlier, there's that beautiful idea of entering the silence beyond outer sound or word, and yet full of the energy of God. That still point of the turning world, as T.S. Eliot put it. It's within us always. All we have to do is turn to it, to rest, relax, and bring the mind home to that beautiful center of peace and possibility at the heart of us. And we need to do it because it's our salvation, not in that old-timey Christian understanding, but to be saved for something greater. So we don't waste all our energy on peripherals and frets and worries, but we save that energy for something greater, more expansive. I am about the work of expansion, arising, converging. I'm about the work of expanding the light and the possibility that is available. I am about the work of being love in action, of remembering who I am in truth and beholding that in all. And it's such a wonderful place in consciousness to be. It is freeing. It's a load off. It's buoyant. It's joyous. It's humorous. It allows me to take deep cleansing breath. To release. And bring myself home to the glorious truth of my being. We do that in the silence. So take a moment now to simply enter that still place at the heart of you where all is well, where creativity dwells. In the silence. In the silence. So as we come forth now from this time of contemplation, meditation, we accept that challenge to be all that we are created to be. We give thanks to Mother, Father, God, creative consciousness, for gifting us with everything that we could possibly need to be successful in this endeavor. We give thanks for our willingness to demonstrate more light in our world, being more loving in our actions, more peaceful in our souls. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ and all the other great way showers of this planet who went before us and demonstrated these great truths. And for all that, we say thank you. Thank you, God, for this day. And so it is. Amen.
And so it is. Thank you, Paul. That was wonderful and refreshing and re-enlivening. We hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Thank you.
We'll proceed with the rest of our service here. And then at the end of that, after our peace song, we'll have a little time for coffee talk. And Paul has agreed to stick with us for a few minutes. So hold your questions till then.